Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Craig Bednarz. I'm here with West Texas A&M University, and I also have a joint appointment with Texas A&M AgriLife here in the Amarillo Canyon area. So I have a 50% appointment with West Texas A&M University and a 50% appointment with Texas AgriLife. So I teach on the WT side, and then I do the research, which is what I'm going to present today on the AgriLife side. So about 2 weeks ago, I told my class, I'm teaching plant physiology this semester, and I told my class about this conference, and I told the students, they'll be here for 2 days and try to come to the conference if you can. Might be an opportunity to learn about, conservation tillage or no tillage a little bit, but also it would be an opportunity to network. There might be a future employer in the room, you never know. So yesterday I had my class at 1 o'clock on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and yesterday I had 3 students come in and said, we're going to go to the conference instead of coming to your class today, Bednarz. So anyway, I was kind of like, well, okay, I guess you can go then as well. But anyway, so I do see 1 or 2 of them in here right now. So, like Steve said, I grew up on the South Plains near Lubbock on my grandfather's farm. It was a small cotton farm, and I'm 56 years old, and I remember when I was a little boy, my grandfather drilled the second well on that farm. And I also remember flood irrigating the cotton on that farm. We used a ditch and siphon tubes, and about the time I got old enough to carry a gated pipe, we switched over to that. And then when I was in college, they switched over to subsurface drip on part of the farm. And now the farm, to my knowledge, is gone back to dry land or very limited irrigation on part of the farm. So I tell people, really within the time span of 1 generation there on the South Plains, all of that water that was under my grandfather's farm is all gone now. And of course, that's the same story for a lot of folks on the South Plains in particular. So, I tell you that because, we all know that agriculture is very important, not just crop production, but also just, our way of life here. Agriculture is our way of life. It's our heritage. And without water, it's really threatened, not only production, but productivity, but our way of life. So this dryland cropping system thing, it's important to me. This is part of who I am, and I'd like to see, cotton production, crop production on the South Plains in particular continue into the future generations. But we're going to have to do some things different, obviously, and that's the focus of my presentation. And what we're going to have to do different, really, if we're going to make dryland crop production work, in my opinion, we're going to need to adopt conservation tillage, or no tillage, and cover crops in some sort of an extended fallow period. And I'll get into more of that as my presentation goes along. I started my role here at WT in May of 2020, and like Steve said, I've bounced around a little bit in my career, and hopefully I found a good place to roost for the rest of it. I really enjoy it here. I won't bore you with the details of my career path, but you may recall in 2020, in May of 2020, we were in the middle of the COVID pandemic, and we were all supposed to be socially isolating. And I started this new job. I have an office in this building right over here, and they wouldn't let me in it because the building had been closed. The whole campus was locked down, and I also couldn't go out to the research center in Bushland and do any work out there for the same reasons. Everything was just shut down. So I spent some time that summer traveling around the South Plains and the Panhandle, talking to growers that are trying to make this dryland thing work. And the reason I wanted to spend time with them is I wanted to learn what they're doing, and then I wanted to bring some form of that back to my research plot space at Bushland and initiate my rain-fed cropping systems program. So I'm going to take you through some of that, what I learned, and then I'll take you through what we've done at Bushland since my arrival in 2020. So one of the growers that I visited with is sitting right here. He's Chris Ferretti, Steve's son. And Chris is farming out there in Rawls, as many of you know. And Chris, again, is implementing cover crops of some sort, trying to work with no-till in an extended fallow period on his dryland acres on his farm. And you can also see here he's implementing wide row cotton production. So the standard row spacing in the South Plains is 40 inches, so this is 80-inch cotton. I asked Chris if I could stick a moisture probe in that field to monitor just the soil moisture dynamic over a period of several months and years, and he let me do that. So this is just the probe, picture of the probe here, and this is just a schematic of the probe. This is a Campbell Scientific probe. It's a little bit different technology than, if you have a probe on your farm, it's probably different technology than this. This is called TDR, is the acronym. The other technology that you may have on your farm is capacitance. A TDR probe, and I have one here that I can share with you if you want to talk about it later, but a TDR probe has three prongs, or they're also called waveguides, that you insert into the soil. And basically you send a small electrical pulse down the middle waveguide, and then it comes back to the sensing head, and that propagation time, as they call it, is related back to soil moisture. They tend to be a little bit more robust and accurate than probes that you generally see out there in the commercial space. But of course, they're a little bit more expensive. Again, I can talk to you about them if you'd like. This is the Campbell Scientific probe, and I wouldn't bother yourself with contacting Campbell Scientific about utilizing one of their moisture probes on your farm if you'd like, because they're going to be a lot more expensive than what you can get commercially. But I wanted to show you some data down here in this table that I'm not sure you can see very well from the back of the room. But I put this probe in the field in Chris's farm in October of 2020 and just let it run until about July the 11th of 21. And just on this table, I've summarized what the soil moisture conditions were like between those two periods. Now, during that time period, Chris received 14 inches of rainfall on his farm. So October, he harvested the cotton, okay, and then the field was basically fallow for a good part of the wintertime, and then he planted a multi-species summer cover on that field in 2021. But I wanted to show you some data here. So this probe, again, is a TDR probe, and it has the waveguides wrapped around this PVC pipe or whatever. It's a little bit of a different form factor. But anyway, it measures soil moisture at many depths, okay, several depths. And from 20 to 50 centimeters on Chris's farm, which is basically down to about 20 inches. On October the 4th, he was about 20% moisture content, which is very low, which it should be because he was growing a cotton crop, a dryland cotton crop in there. After that 14 inches of rainfall on July the 11th, the soil moisture had increased to almost 40%, and that's basically field capacity, okay? That's very high. So after that 14 inches of rainfall, from the surface down to 20 inches, he was basically at field capacity, okay? From 60 to 75 centimeters depth, which is down to around 35 or 6 inches, the moisture content had not changed, okay? So it was 15% in October of 20, and it was 17% in July of 21. That is well below what's referred to as the permanent wilting point. That soil has no moisture in it at all, and it did not change during that time period. So that's an indication that 14 inches of rainfall did not infiltrate down to that roughly past 20 inches. And then when we get down to roughly 40 inches, Chris had about 32% moisture down there on October the 10th and 33% on July. So again, moisture didn't get down there as well. Would like to point out that's near field capacity. That moisture is down deep, and it's right in the middle of these two rows. And what that suggests to me is that his cotton crop really didn't have access to that moisture down there. It's not much moisture down there at 40 inches, but I would take it if I was a dryland cotton farmer. So I wanted to switch gears a little bit and display this data in a different way. This again is data from Chris's farm on May the 1st of 21 to September the 30th of 21. And rather than just summarizing the data for a whole time period, like I did in the previous graph, I wanted to show you the actual daily data. So these probes, they'll take a data point as often as you want, okay? And from my opinion, we don't need more than 1 or 2 a day. But anyway, these are the daily data points by depth interval as well for that time period. So the top graph here shows you the soil moisture content at the top 4 depth intervals, which is 20, 30, 40, and 50 centimeters. And then this bottom graph displays the soil moisture at 60, 75, and 100 centimeters. And then this is the rainfall events for each day, and you can't really see that very well. But during this time period, Chris received 15.8 inches of rainfall on that farm. And I was beginning to think, I've got this thing figured out. You know, I think I know how we can make dryland cotton work in the South Plains, and that means we just need to install soil moisture probes all over the place because they're apparently a rain magnet. But that was the last time he had really good moisture on that farm that I'm aware of during this time period. But I wanted to show you, you know, these lines here, when the slope increases, when the line goes up, that's an increase in soil moisture. When the slope decreases or the line goes down, that's a decrease in soil moisture. So you can see Chris received a good bit of rainfall, and this was around the end of May, the 1st of June. The sensors at 20, 30, and 40 centimeters of depth saw moisture, and they started increasing. You know, they responded to that. This green line here represents soil moisture at 50 centimeters, and you see it gradually was increasing. So all that rainfall was gradually working its way down to that 50 centimeters of depth, which again is about 20 inches. But you look at this bottom graph, and we didn't see any change at all. So again, that moisture was not getting down deeper into the profile. About the middle of July, we start to see slope down right here. And Chris had planted the multi-species blend, and I think he said he planted it in June at some point, and it was really starting to get big, okay? And you know, those blends, you know, are forage sorghum, Sudan grass. They're species that really can mine the soil for moisture. And that's basically what was happening here. So I'm all about, you know, cover crops for the obvious reasons, but we have to keep in mind that, you know, if we're going to fallow a piece of ground and cover it for the benefits of organic matter and just residue, we also have to keep in mind that we're going to grow a cash crop in that field in the following year, and the whole point here is to conserve moisture, okay? And that cover crop was using a lot of moisture. Now, I don't have to tell Chris this. He already knows this. He doesn't need my probe to tell him that, and I think to this day he's even switched what he's doing, and so again, just a different thing that he's doing. So we took what we had learned and we went back to our research facility at Bushland, and the institute that I am in charge of was assigned 30 acres of plot space on the ARS station that's there at Bushland. If you're familiar with it, it's ARS on one side and AgriLife on the other. So we have 30 acres on this, what they call the south section, and I was told that I could irrigate 10 acres of it, and the rest of it would be devoted to our dry land cropping systems research. So on the left here, I need to update this. This is a photo of the whole 30 acres, but on the left here, this is the 10 acres. We have this really nice linear system now, and it's capable of differentially applying irrigation water, so we can do all kinds of water use efficiency stuff. But over here on the right is our systems trial that we established at that time, and this is where we started. This is all subject to change as we learn and we go along. But each of these squares represents about a 2-acre block, and the plots that are labeled fallow are the area that we have assigned to continuous cotton, conventionally tilled. Year after year after year, we're gonna grow cotton if we can, dry land. The plots that are labeled wheat are plots that we planted wheat, we harvested it in the spring if there was anything there. We left the stubble on the surface of the soil for the following growing season, and then we planted cotton into it the next year. And then the plants, or the blocks that are labeled rye, we just again planted rye in the fall, left it there all throughout the next summer, and again, the intention is to plant cotton into it the following year. Initially, we were going to, in the rye plots, we were going to come in there in the spring and terminate the rye and plant a multi-species blend. But we didn't do that because, again, we were concerned about conserving water, and then also we just had a really nice stand of rye, and I don't have a no-till drill and didn't really want to make a mess out of things. So this is some data that we collected from that plot, and after about a year or so. And again, I'll just read this off to you. This is rainfall. This is just soil moisture data. And we used, yet again, a different moisture technology for this. We used a neutron probe, which is a pretty good piece of equipment. But I'll just read this off to you. So during our time period from May the 1st to September 31st, that's what the rainfall here is illustrating. We received only 11 inches of rainfall during that time period, only 11. Compared to Chris, that's not much. But anyway, we'll take it. It's a lot of rainfall. The soil moisture in the cotton plot was at 21%. You would expect it to be low because we had dryland cotton growing there. The soil moisture in the wheat and the rye were statistically higher. And if we sum up how much plant available moisture was in each of those systems from 0 down to 100 centimeters, the cotton plot had 1.7 inches of plant available water. The wheat plot had 3.6 inches of plant available water, and the rye plot had 4.5 inches of plant available water. Now again, the cotton had less, and it was statistically less, but you would expect it to be less because we had a cotton crop growing there. The other two systems were in their fallow period and hopefully harvesting rainfall. I want to point out that we received 11 inches of rainfall during that time period, but at best we were only able to find 4.5 inches of plant available moisture in the profile. So that represents what we'll just call a rainfall harvest efficiency of less than 50%. And that gets to the point, the whole point of dryland crop production. We have to put our fields in a situation where they will harvest rainfall. We want the moisture to infiltrate into the profile once we receive rainfall, and we want that moisture to be available for the next crop that we plant. And that's why we need things like cover crops and no-tillage and extended fallow periods. We need to increase the organic matter in our soils, and once we do that, all of those other downstream soil health benefits that result from increased organic matter will help our soils to harvest rainfall when it does come. So a rainfall efficiency of less than 50% means we lost a lot of it to just evaporation from the surface of the soil. We could lose it to runoff, but we're in the plains. Well, that's not just a huge issue for us. But again, it illustrates my point. This is why we're doing what we're doing. What can we do from a systems standpoint to improve rainfall harvest efficiency on our farms? I wanted to switch gears just a minute and tell you that last March I had the opportunity to go to Australia. It was a really wonderful time. Cotton Incorporated and their counterparts in Australia, put together an information exchange. And Cotton Incorporated asked a couple of U.S.-based cotton agronomists to go over to Australia and visit with cotton farmers over there and learn, what they're doing, not only in irrigated production, but also in their dryland production as well. And then we had a couple of Australian scientists came over here last September. So I was one of the two people from the U.S. that got invited to go to Australia to talk to their growers and learn what I could. I also went with some of my Cotton Incorporated colleagues, and it was just a wonderful experience. We were over there for 2 weeks in the month of March. So you remember what March was like here last year. It was cold and it was windy and dusty, and I had the opportunity to go over there. It was nice and warm. So anyway, that was a really nice opportunity. We flew into Sydney and we toured this portion of the cotton production regions of Australia. This is all in the state of New South Wales. This is the irrigated portion of or an irrigated cotton producing region in the country. And that's a different talk, but irrigated cotton in Australia is very different. It's all flood irrigated. growers there have to have a permit or a license from the government to use or to pump water. And they all pump water from the rivers and the tributaries that flow through this region of the country, and they have to store it on farm until they use it. So the amount of water that a grower is allowed to pump is determined by how much rainfall they've received in the previous years or whatnot, because a lot of it has to go back to what they call the environment. And it's all highly regulated, very much monitored. And while I was over there, the whole time I was just thinking, man, this would never work in Texas. That would start a big fight. But anyway, the northern part of the country in the state of Queensland is where all of the dryland cotton production was, and that's what I was really interested in learning from. I would like to point out to you that in Australia, the government doesn't help the agriculture, doesn't support agriculture in any way. So growers have to, they gotta figure it out. And again, I'm not saying we're not figuring it out over here, but they just don't have the government support in Australia. This is a lot of what I saw in the dryland production regions in Australia. We are in a semi-arid region here, which means we don't receive a lot of rainfall. They don't receive a lot there as well. But we're blessed by good soils. We have good clay loam soils here that are somewhat deep, and they can hold a lot of plant available moisture. I meant to say this earlier and I forgot, but if our soils are at field capacity down to say 40 inches when we plant, then we have anywhere from 6 to 7 inches of plant available moisture. Okay, and if we can plant into a field that has some good plant available moisture, a relatively full soil profile, and we receive any help from Mother Nature at all during the growing season, I think a 700-pound cotton crop is well within striking distance. And that's the same thing that they're trying to do here. They fallow ground, they cover it, and then they wait for the rainfall to come. They have deeper soils that will hold more moisture than ours, but anyway, and they can still make some really amazing dryland yields. But I saw a lot of this. This is wide row cotton. In Australia, the standard row widths for irrigated cotton are 1 meter, which is roughly 40 inches. I saw 2 meter cotton, 3 meter row spacings, and I also saw 4 meter row spacings. So very, very wide. Some of those fields, I assume, where the row spacings were 4 meters, I assume what they were trying to do is fallow and plant in the same field. I'm not sure what is the benefit from that, because obviously if you've got 2 rows of cotton that are over 12 feet apart, they're not going to be able to utilize that moisture that's in that row middle. So I was just assuming, okay, I'm back on. I was assuming that they're trying to do something like fallow ground and plant cotton in the same field. And then this is just a grower that we visited. Of course, they're moving the row units out. He had both irrigated and dryland cotton. He was getting ready to harvest that dryland cotton. Row middles are fairly clean, and I saw this rig. This is an autonomous sprayer. There's no cab, there's no driver whatsoever. It's See and Spray technology. They load it up with a non-selective herbicide, and the grower basically creates a mission plan for this rig, and it just goes up and down the fields all throughout the farm, and it sprays when it sees weeds. Really interesting technology. When it runs out of spray solution, it comes back to the refill point. When it comes to a county road, it will stop and wait for someone to escort it across. When it finishes its mission, it'll start right back over if you want it to. So basically, this is a mechanical hoe hand that just is non-stop. It doesn't matter if it's night, day, whatever. It will do its thing. So saw quite a bit of that, or not quite a bit. We saw some of that while we were there as well. So that's technology. I know that is that's here coming, but I haven't seen a completely autonomous rig yet. I know we have rigs that still have cabs in them, but I haven't seen a completely autonomous one yet. And it's not green. So I took what I had learned from the growers as well as Australia, and I tried to implement that back on our research plot space at Bushland this last year. So this last year we were in the portion of the cycle where we planted the cotton, continuous conventionally tilled cotton plots. And again, it's a 2-acre plot, so I decided, well, we'll try some wide row in our plot space. And you know, wide row, it's not that difficult to understand that concept. If you have rows that are spaced farther apart, you just are, you know, giving the planted row more soil volume to explore for moisture. So it's not a difficult concept, but does it make more cotton year in, year out than our conventional row spacings is the question. This picture was taken on August the 31st of this past year. Now, you may recall for the whole month of May in Bushland, we received about 12 inches of rainfall. And I tell everybody, I've never been, you know, prevented from planting cotton in this part of the world because of more, you know, it was too wet. But throughout the whole month of May, we really couldn't plant this plot because it was too wet. And we decided that we would finally plant it in the middle of June. Now that's getting late for the Texas Panhandle, but this is dryland cotton and we'll mature it, sure enough. But anyway, this is what that cotton looked like on October the 31st. After we received all that rainfall, you all know it pretty much stopped raining, okay? This was mid-morning of October the 31st, and you can't really see in this photograph very well, but the 30-inch cotton is wilting down. It's mid-morning, and that cotton is already wilted, okay? You know, in drylands production, you'll probably see later in the day cotton wilt down, but it will recover overnight. And then it will begin to wilt down again in the afternoon and it will recover overnight. And when you see a crop, any crop wilting mid-morning, that means basically the soil is out of moisture. That recovery that we normally see overnight didn't happen because there just was no more plant available moisture in that field. So the 30-inch cotton on August the 31st was just basically out of water. The 60-inch cotton, again, it's hard to see, but it was still perked up and doing okay. So we had some more of these moisture probes that we stuck out there. We have 12 of them, and we put them out there in this field. AgriLife has a request for proposals for equipment that it sends out to all of its scientists once or twice a year. And I requested a grant to purchase some more Campbell Scientific gear that I put in this trial. And it was a $40,000 grant. And we purchased all that equipment, finally got it stuck in the soil, all installed about the middle of July. And I just tell you that so that you'll understand that AgriLife is, you know, is supporting you all indirectly through this research as well. You know, they fully understand the situation that we have out here and want to do whatever they can to help you know, dryland cropping systems research. So again, we have the probes out there, and this is just I guess a summary of some of the data that we collected through the month of August. Okay, so from August the 1st to August 31st, this is just the average of all the different depths by day. Okay, this just says record number. This is by day. So the blue line represents the soil moisture that we were able to find under the 30-inch cotton. And the red line represents the soil moisture that we were able to find under the 60-inch cotton. You can see that the 30-inch cotton, the moisture content was much, much lower, okay, throughout the month of August. And that makes sense because the cotton was really wilted and suffering from water deficit stress. You can see here on August the 31st, when we took that picture, the moisture content was well below the permanent wilting point. These probes are not exact, you know, none of them are. We all kind of have our definition of what is permanent wilting point and what's field capacity. And I say this because I probably have colleagues out there that are going to challenge me on some of my data here at some point. But anyway, it is what it is. It's no moisture down to the 30-inch cotton, but the 60-inch cotton you see was still above 25% moisture. Some people would say that's very, very near permanent wilting, but anyway, the point is it had more moisture under it than the 30-inch cotton.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
Is the probe in the furrow or in the row?
We've got one in the row and we've got one right there. And this represents the moisture that was under the row. And a good thing that you asked that, Barry, because I'm going to reconfigure all this next year. I mean, if we wanted to get more of a two-dimensional or three-dimensional image of what the soil moisture dynamic looked like, we want to install them that way. But that means I'm using twice as many probes for a single plot. I'd like to try to spread them out across more plots. So probably what I'll do is I'm going to reconfigure this and put every one of them just in the row. Because again, I mean, if your moisture content under the row looks like that, then there's not much out here at that point either. So again, these are large plots, and we have a basket stripper at Bushland, and Cody was able to help get it harvested. We took large samples to the Texas Tech Fiber Biopolymer Research Institute, where they have a microgen there, which is just it has all the pre-cleaning equipment and all the lint cleaning equipment that a commercial gin has. It's just smaller in scale. So it's the closest thing that we can get to commercial ginning with research plots. So these are yield data. I didn't statistically analyze this data. I know that you all are going to throw me out of here now because I just said that, I just admitted that, but we don't really have enough data to bother with statistics at this point. And I'm just showing you the means. All these numbers are the means of 3 plots, so you can make up your own mind if this is meaningful or not. But the 30-inch cotton, we harvested about 286 pounds of lint. 60-inch cotton was 294. Gin turnout, seed per pound, you can see, or seed per acre, you can see that. Fiber quality. Now we know, the leaf grade was about 3 or less. Micronair was around 4.5, length was 1. I mean, this is dry link cotton, it really stressed, so we didn't have the best the length and uniformity and strength as a result of that. I did see just a little trend here I'd like to point out. On the 30-inch cotton, we saw higher micronair and lower staple lengths. And again, that's not statistically validated, but I think it kind of makes a little sense. Understanding that 30-inch cotton probably was under more severe water deficit stress than the 60-inch cotton. For those of you that are not that familiar with cotton, an individual cotton fiber is an individual cell. Okay, cotton fibers are born or emerge or elongate from a single cell on the outer coat or the epidermis of a seed. And the day that a white flower or a flower is pollinated, that cell begins to elongate, okay? And that cell, before it begins to elongate, is 50 micrometers in length, but when it finishes elongating, ideally it would be 1.25 inches long. So that elongation from its initial length is just several times over its initial length, which is quite amazing, that happens. And for that to happen, we have to have water. Water moves into that cell and creates what we call turgor pressure and causes that cell to elongate, to expand. So when we have dry land conditions, we have much shorter fiber lengths as a result. Now that fiber elongation phase occurs for about the first 3 weeks after pollination. And once that is complete, that fiber is similar to a soda straw. It is hollow on the inside. And then for the next 3 weeks, cellulose is deposited on the inside of that fiber into what's referred to as the lumen. And then that's how micronair is established, okay? So if you think about a fiber that is shorter, then that void space within it, that lumen space, is going to be less, okay? So it's not hard to get into a situation where we tend to have higher micronair. So when I was growing up on the South Plains, dry land cotton tended to be shorter and produce higher micronair fibers, and that's a part of the reason why. It's because the fibers never had the moisture to elongate, but fiber filling still occurred for some reason unimpeded. So what we see here again is the 30-inch cotton, which was under more severe stress, produced slightly shorter fibers and slightly higher micronair than the 60-inch cotton. So again, that's just another indication to me that it's slightly stressed. So then we use the loan chart just to calculate premiums and discounts. And of course, it's always discount. I don't know if you've ever looked at the loan chart. There's a lot more negative numbers than there are positive numbers on the loan chart. But anyway, color, leaf, and staple, interestingly enough, we took a higher discount for color, leaf, and staple on that 30-inch cotton than we did the 60-inch cotton. Just that very, very small difference in fiber length, crossed the line, and we ended up with a bit higher discount. Uniformity discounts were the same. Anyway, about a cent and a half more per pound for the 60-inch cotton than the 30-inch cotton. So again, if we just use all this to calculate just lint value per acre, basically the 60-inch cotton was around $7 or $8 more an acre, and that's just yield, and that's on a per acre basis. Per land acre. Per land acre, yeah. So again, that's just yield per land acre, and that doesn't include any input costs. Okay, and you can down the road seeding rate was the same. Okay, I would really like to see what would have happened if we'd have gotten any moisture at all during the growing season to see how this would have changed. I wasn't able to monitor soil moisture when we planted the cotton. We got all that rainfall in May. I'm assuming that we still didn't start off with a full profile because, again, this is ground that's been tilled. Anyway, that's what we made off of 14 inches of rainfall in the month of May and very little rainfall after that. Next year, we're going to, in the cycle, that we're going to plant the whole trial. So the trial that has the wheat and the rye cover, or the part of the trial that has the wheat and rye cover, we'll plant that next year. Again, assuming we have planting moisture. But I'm really interested to see that because I assume that the soil moisture under the wheat and the rye is much better than it is here, okay? We know where we ended here, and we'll see where we start at the beginning of this coming growing season. So I also have AgriLife colleagues that are helping me on this project, and one of them is helping us to keep up with soil carbon. And soil carbon, it's highly variable, as you might guess. You run out the field, you grab a soil sample, and you take it back to the lab. And I don't know what they do. It takes about 3 months, but you finally get back some data. And this is what it looks like. So basically, soil carbon organic carbon was higher under the rye and the wheat plots than it was under the cotton. I mean, you would expect that because it's no-till, okay? I've had colleagues tell me that that's just a momentary blip, on the radar screen. That's not going to stay that way. I have colleagues that tell me we cannot increase organic matter or organic carbon content in this semi-arid region. And I suggest to you that is true the way that we use cover crops, okay? We plant wheat in the fall, we terminate it in the spring, and we plant our cotton into it in May, and by midsummer you can't even tell if there was any cover planted there at all, okay? If we plant a cover, let it go to maturity, and let it stay there for the next 12 months during a fallow period, I submit to you that we will be able to document an increase in organic carbon. And that's what this is, starting off. Okay, I want to switch gears one more time and tell you about some other stuff that we're doing. And I presented some of this at a meeting in Lubbock back in the fall, and I didn't do a very good job of explaining it because I had a lot of deer in the headlight looks, so I'm going to try to do a better job here. Again, what we're trying to do here with cover crops and no-till in fallow periods is we're trying to increase soil organic carbon, okay? That is the beginning of improvements in soil health, in my opinion. All of the downstream benefits in soil health, which is going to be improved moisture infiltration, start with a better soil carbon. So there's a couple of ways you can monitor soil carbon. You can grab a sample and take it back to the lab and take 3 months to determine how much is in there, which again, that data is highly variable because the soil is highly variable. You can indirectly measure with a device like this. This is called an eddy covariance tower, and it's very interesting technology. When I was working on my PhD in the early 90s, I learned a little bit about this technology. It's come a long way since then. Sensor technology is a lot better. Electronics are much more robust. We have, computing power that's a lot better than we did back then. But this sensor right here is a combination of an anemometer and a gas analyzer. It's called a sonic anemometer, and what that means is it can measure wind speed and direction in not only the horizontal direction, but the vertical direction as well. If we think about wind, wind moves, it blows. We know wind blows. We think it moves just kind of in a laminar fashion, but it's a series of eddies, or it's a swirling vortices of air that collectively move across an environment or an ecosystem. So when an eddy enters that sensor is taking readings 10 times a second. That sensor can tell you which direction, not only how fast, but which direction the eddy is moving. So we can have movement not only horizontally, but we can have movement vertically, and that sensor moving so fast it'll pick that up. There's also a gas analyzer in there that is sensitive, that can measure atmospheric CO2 concentrations, okay? It can also measure water vapor concentrations. So they call this technology eddy covariance because we're measuring eddies and we're also measuring changes in CO2 and water vapor. So that's the reason they call it covariance, is because we're measuring multiple things that vary at one time. And it's very interesting technology. And this one we happen to have launched in Barry's farm out there in Cress. And we just let the thing run. So if you're going to engage in some sort of a conservation tillage practice, you can grab a soil sample, 1 or 2 times a year, or you can stick all these towers up and measure carbon flux, okay, multiple times a second throughout the year. So this system takes, again, a reading every 10 seconds, and every 30 minutes, it has 18,000 data points that the onboard computer uses to calculate flux of carbon dioxide and water for that 30-minute period of time. And the graph on the right shows you what that looks like. If we have a crop growing, it is pulling carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere through the process of photosynthesis. So flux of CO2 during the day is negative. We think about the atmosphere as being the source of CO2, and the crop is the sink, and it's pulling CO2 out of the atmosphere, so our readings are negative. So we see here that we have negative readings during the day, okay? When the sun goes down, photosynthesis stops, but respiration is still occurring in the plant and the crop as well as the soil. So at night, flux should be positive. And that's what we see here. We see above zero values at night and below zero values during the day. Now, water vapor movement is a measurement of evapotranspiration. It's always going to be positive, okay, for the most part in our part of the world. So water vapor is always going to be leaving our ecosystem. So those numbers are always going to be positive. We can get into situations where if, dew point temperatures are high enough, which basically just means if the relative humidity is high enough, you create a situation where you walk outside in the morning, there's dew on the grass, well then you'll have a negative value here. That rarely happens in our part of the world. So again, season over season, year over year, how much carbon dioxide is being brought into the environment, okay? When we harvest the crop, that represents a whole lot of carbon dioxide the crop pulled out of the atmosphere. We harvest the crop and we carry it off, okay? So if we monitor carbon flux for a whole growing season, we have to take that out of what we were able to document that the crop took up during the growing season. That's called carbon export, y'all. So when you are in the circles where people are talking about this, when somebody refers to carbon export, that means somebody harvested the crop and took it off the field. But then the remaining crop that's there, the stubble, the ground cover, what happens to it? Well, through the process of microbial decomposition, carbon dioxide is released back to the atmosphere. So again, it's not just flux on a day-to-day basis or even through the growing season. It's year over year. What's the flux situation look like? Are we net, negative, which means the ecosystem, sequestered carbon that it was able to capture through photosynthesis? Or are we net positive, which means we actually had a decrease in a soil organic carbon or whatever over that 12-month period. Hopefully this is making sense to all of you. Spending more time trying to describe than I did the first time. And again, we're taking a data point just every 30 minutes. So you can even see things like, well, it was hotter one day, that you can see that in your flux data. So I wanted to share with you some of the flux data that we were able to capture from Barry's farm. And this is from August the 1st to August the 31st of this past summer. This was a dryland farm, and when we installed this tower sometime in June, it was decent dryland cotton. Has a good moisture, but again, as the season progressed, it slid further and further into drought stress. Okay. And so these are just accumulated values. So you see that on this axis over here, the values are just becoming more and more negative. So again, over a 24-hour period of time, the crop is taking up more CO2 through the process of photosynthesis that it is releasing back to the atmosphere through respiration of the crop as well as the soil. I see 3 slope changes in this graph. Okay, I see a slope right here. And then I see a bit of a slope change right here that's a little bit more flat. And then I see more of a flat slope change there as well. Any ideas what's going on there? Barry's crop is going into more and more severe water deficit stress. Okay, and that will be reflected in the carbon uptake data. Okay, so again, I see the crop is under stress here. We get to a new level of stress here, and sure enough, if we're just flatline, that means that crop is completely out of water in my book, and that's some very, very severe stress. So a point that I've tried to make before is we have land here. We don't have a lot of water. We're in a semi-arid environment. We don't have a lot of water, but we have land, and we're in this era where we're in this climate smart era. I mean, we're all preaching the same thing. We're just calling it something different. Okay. We're in this era where greenhouse gases are a problem, and we're looking to agriculture to help solve that problem. Okay, how much carbon dioxide does a crop take out of the atmosphere year over year, and can we keep that carbon sequestered in the soil? Again, through no-till and cover crops, I would suggest to you that the answer is yes, we can keep more of it than we're doing now. That benefits the climate, it benefits the grower. But how can we monitor it? Well, we can monitor it with technology like this. So during the month of August, Barry's burning up dryland cotton crop. How much CO2 did it take out of the atmosphere? Well, I want to start by saying pointing you to this little web page here on the right. This is from the EPA, and it's just how much carbon emissions are produced when we burn 1 gallon of gasoline. And according to the EPA, it's what the heck is it? It's over 7,000 grams of CO2 is emitted from the burning of 1 gallon of gasoline. So that's over a pound of CO2. Barry's cotton crop for the month of August on a per acre basis, where is it? Offset the emissions of 82 gallons of gasoline, okay, on a per acre basis. So this is Barry's dryland cotton crop that is burning up, that on a per acre basis still was able to capture enough carbon that it offset the burning of 82 gallons of gasoline. So, and again, if you think about what it would be like if that was again a good cotton crop that we can capture thousands of pounds of CO2 on a per acre basis is my point, okay? And again, is that important to you? Have you ever heard of carbon credits? I mean, I don't know where we are in the world of carbon credits. I can tell you 2 Christmases ago, I bought a gift online, and when I got to the point of checking out, they asked me if I wanted to ship with carbon credits or whatever. Anyway, I said, yeah, I'm game. I paid a few extra bucks to buy carbon credits that offset the emissions from the UPS truck driver delivering that thing to my house. Okay, and I went and looked on the website, and that was carbon credits that came from someplace in South America. Okay, why can't we produce carbon credits here in the Texas Panhandle of South Plains that people, use to offset shipment of all their stuff from Amazon. So again, my point, I think I've made. I just have a few more slides, and I wanted to talk about, the soil health and the principles of soil health. And you've all seen this, I'm sure. There's 5 principles of soil health. The first one being keep the soil covered, and the second one being minimize soil disturbance. Well, there's nothing new under the sun there. We've been talking about that for a long, long time. That's cover crops and no-till. Why haven't we adopted that? We've been preaching this message for a long time, and we haven't adopted it yet. Why not? Well, in my opinion, there's 2 very good reasons. One of them is that cover crop takes water, and the other one is related to weed control. Okay, we don't want to spend money on the cover crop. We want to save it for the cash crop. But again, I suggest to you that if we think about doing something a little bit different, we might actually be farther ahead in soil moisture by utilizing cover crops than farther behind. And weed control is a big one. We have to, I guess, figure that out as well. I was in a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and again, the comment was made, get ready for your spring herbicide applications. If kochia comes up, then you won't be able to control it with anything other than a cultivator. Okay, so I say a lot of people give up on no-till as soon as weed control gets out of control. It's no longer controlled. So again, that's a pretty high bar to adoption of this cover crops and no-till. These other points, crop biodiversity, those are just raising the bar even further, in my opinion, that are making it more difficult for growers to adopt it. Crop diversity, we plant the crops that we plant in this part of the world because they make economic sense and agronomic sense, and we're kind of stuck with what we have. A living root in the soil at all times, I know that's for rhizosphere biodiversity, and I have no reason to believe that that's not a valid point. But again, that crop uses water, and number one, we need to be focused on organic matter first. Okay, let's improve organic matter before we, again, I'm not saying if the root microbiome or whatever is not important, but we know organic matter is at the beginning of all improvements in soil health. So again, that makes things a lot more difficult, to implement these other ones, these other suggestions. And I'm not saying that we should do them or we shouldn't ignore them, but again, in my opinion, focused on cover crops and no-till. I was in this room, I think it was in August. There was a Farm Bill listening session, and I attended it, and it was very interesting. Ronnie Jackson was supposed to be here. Jody Arrington was here, and anyway, it was really interesting to listen to all of the groups talk about what they wanted in the Farm Bill. And at the end, there were some summary comments made that basically said there's no one-size-fits-all Farm Bill. And of course, I can agree with that. And then the comment was made, and I'm paraphrasing, I'm not trying to take words out of somebody's mouth, but said something like, for example, we know that cover crops use water in West Texas, and we can't write that into some kind of farm. Because we can't force growers to plant cover crops, So what that means to me is, again, what we do, policy changes are going to have to require information. Okay, we can't just suggest something unless we have a good reason to back it up. So what we do, in our research program, obviously has to be done on the farm as well, and the growers have to try it out and have to buy into it as well. So any changes that might be coming in the future, again, what I'm trying to say is it's going to come about through research and working with growers. The growers are going to have to support that. And that just kind of brings me to my point that I'm trying to make is, one thing that might help drive the adoption of this is through some sort of policy change. I asked the question, and I know you all asked the same question. We plant cotton into a dryland field that was failed out the previous year because of lack of moisture, and we're going to do the same thing this year. We still haven't had much, enough moisture to make a decent crop, so we're doing the same thing. Why not try to do something different? I'm not saying we should withdraw support. COVID and all of the supply chain issues we had should be a clear proof of why we need to support agriculture in this country. That's not saying we shouldn't try to do something different, okay? Year over year, if you were able to fallow a dryland contrail, stick a moisture probe in the field, and when you get to 70% of a full profile, then go after your dryland crop. And if it was a bale and a half or whatever, year over year, you might be farther ahead from a profit standpoint. Who knows? There's lots of pieces, moving pieces in this. But again, it's hard for growers to do something different because not only is it difficult to implement, but it's not necessarily in line with ag policy currently. And I know that we're making some changes, and that's the point that I'm trying to make here. Just a couple more slides. AgriLife, you may have heard of the Climate Smart initiative. This is a federal program or a federal grant that the AgriLife, Texas A&M AgriLife received this past year, and it's a multi-million-dollar grant. It's a real big feather in the cap of AgriLife, okay? And they're looking for growers to team up with them. And basically, if you're utilizing cover crops and no-till, some sort of conservation, or what they refer to as climate smart practice on your farm, they would like to team up with you and collect data on your field. I'm not 100% sure what they want to do, but I would like to say to you that there is a financial incentive here that they are offering for you to team up with them. I think there's something along the lines with the NRCS guidelines where if you adopt or implement some sort of a conservation tillage practice on your farm, you get some sort of a financial incentive for that. And then AgriLife is offering the same thing. They want to sign up a lot of growers, okay? And so far, they don't have many of them signed up. So if you're already practicing some of this on your farm, then it would be fairly straightforward process for you to sign up with AgriLife. And again, they just want to know that you farmers you follow some sort of farm-specific climate smart management program. Is what we've been talking about the last hour. Allow them to sample soil and gas, which the grant purchased 20 of those eddy covariance towers. I called them, talked to them on the phone the day before yesterday, and told them I wanted to be part of this. I told them I already had an eddy covariance tower out. I got a couple more in the storage unit. We're going to try to put them out. Of course, they really wanted to team up with me on that. I wasn't on the grant that was awarded. I think the team was put together about the time I arrived. And so you see all of the partners that are on this grant. Tarleton's on the grant, Prairie View A&M is on that grant, West Texas A&M is not on that grant. And I got a beef with them about that. I want to be on the next one, okay? I mean, if there's anybody that should be working on this, it should be growers in the Panhandle and the South Plains. Anyway, I made my point very clear, both to the people that are running that grant and to my agricultural administration. So if you're interested in that, you can scan that code, or you can go to climatesmart.ag.tau.edu, learn more about the program. Oh, and I guess there's some handouts in the back. So.
Yeah, just want to mention that
Okay.
actually, let's see us over in the corner here.
All right, there you go. So again, we're all in this together. One last slide. West Texas A&M University was very fortunate to receive a land donation from one of the farming families in this area in December of 2022, and Cindy Gruner was the landowner that donated this land. It's 23 acres. It is about 10 minutes from here, and it's going to be so valuable to us in our teaching programs as well as our research programs. For me to get out to Bushland, it takes a good 35 or 40 minutes to drive out there. And I can't, take a class out there. It's way too far. And so anyway, we have this new piece of land. We're going to name it the W.T. Gruner Family Farm. It was just a wonderful donation to the university. It's going to help us grow, our department grow in the future. When you hire new faculty, they're going to want to do research for their own career advancement. They're going to want to do research because you're not going to be able to advance your career
if you're not a decent teacher, and B, doing some sort of a decent research. And we can't all go out to Bushland, so the Gruner family farm is going to be a tremendous asset to us. There's a well on it. We're going to install 5 acres of subsurface drip. That's all of the irrigated acres that are going to be out there. The rest of it is going to be devoted to some sort of dry land cropping systems research. So what I'm doing at Bushland, I'll be able to expand out here. And one of the things that I wanted to do was to establish some sort of a cover crops trial. I occasionally get questions about cover crops. What kind of cover crops should I plant? I'm not a cover crops person. The answer is always the same. I don't know. I don't know what all options are out there. We need a cover crop that fits our system, fits our region, okay? Again, we need a cover crop that will germinate, emerge, and grow off under less than ideal moisture conditions. We need a cover crop that grows low, it grows slow, it produces lots of lignin and cellulose that'll put organic matter back into the soil. I don't know what that is. And if any of you have any ideas, I'm all ears, okay? I'm not asking too much of a cover crop, actually, but anyway, we wanted to establish a trial out there that would be a demo, and hopefully in the not too distant future, if you have, if you want to see what we have going on, learn about what cover crops we have, not only what are they, but how, how easy or not are they to establish and maintain and to control weeds in, et cetera, et cetera. Then hopefully we'll have a demonstration out there. So if you have a suggestion for a cover crop, please, just let me know. We're going to try to establish that. Again, this is all a native range land right now. We're going to keep a portion of it in that native range land, so we'll be able to monitor what happens as we, basically till the soil and establish our cover crops relative to what it is right now, the way it's been for probably in some sort of equilibrium for a number of years. So anyway, that's all I had. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to you. I'm very honored to be invited by this group. Again, what we're trying to accomplish in our program is very much in line with what your interests are. Like to see agriculture remain viable and productive in this part of the world for generations to come, because it's part of who we are. It's our culture, and water threatens not only agriculture production but our culture as well. So, thank you very much, and if there are any questions, I'll try to answer.
I really enjoyed your presentation. The one question that I wanted to ask was, a lot of the research that I've seen, they'll say, well, no-till doesn't work, or it's not any better than conventional, or whatever, but it's in a continuous cropping system.
Yeah.
And so they'll harvest that crop, and then in December, they'll sow wheat, and then it gets this big, they terminate it, it might even be definite.
Yeah.
And, it's never about just one thing. It's not just wide row or just no-till, but you said that in this research that you're using wheat and rye and then having a full fallow period and then doing your research. How long have you been utilizing that full fallow period in your dryland research?
So we've been trying to do that ever since we established it. So we'll try to have a fallow period for a 12-month period and come back and plant either cotton or wheat or whatever. And dryland ag is hard. And we've been prevented from planting wheat or rye a couple of times.
But how many years do you go back doing that? Or is it something that's just brand new?
I just started this, actually. That's a good question. I just started this. So I arrived in 2020, and I couldn't do anything in 2020. So in 2021 is when that was established. So we're just now beginning to. I tell everybody that I work with, I'm getting excited about that plot space because the plots are just now becoming established. Okay, we're finally starting to see some results of all of our work, and so hopefully in the not too distant future we'll be able to add a lot more data. This is a very limited amount of information we have at this point, but hopefully we'll be able to add a lot to the data that we have in the coming years. And I can tell you, this was all just conventionally tilled ground when I took it, when it was assigned to us, and it had been, no one had been utilizing it for I don't know how many years, and weed pressure has just been, our nemesis out there. We really spent, some money trying to keep the darn weeds under control. And again, that's where a lot of people just decide to quit and give up on no-till, just trying to get it started. So, but anyway, hopefully in the not too distant future we'll have a lot more information. Again, I'm excited about this summer. Hopefully we have good planting moisture and we have cotton across that whole area and just see what we end up with in terms of yield. So, yeah. There was another. Yes, sir.
When going to verify your 30 versus 60 row plot,
Yeah.
you basically have the same population per foot of rows.
Correct.
And half the actual population of 60.
Correct.
Versus 30.
Correct. We just picked up a row unit when we were planting the 60 inch. Yeah.
So approximately what was that population?
20, less than 20, you say?
Yeah, the 30-inch row was planted, the target was 31 shit under what plants, so it's probably 33,000 on the 30-inch row. So half that, 16 and a half.
What seeding rate are you putting in your rye and wheat?
50 pounds per acre. So we're really trying to do a good job covering it. I used to work for the University of Georgia, and so I'd say cover crops are a lot more popular there. The growers, it's a little bit of a different mentality. They want the more residue, the better. They really like that. Of course, it rains more there, and they want that rye to be this tall and just thick. And I would say, if we're going to fallow for an extended period of time, that's kind of what we were shooting for too. Is a really good cover, really thick rye, and do a good job of covering that ground, protecting it for the next 12 months. And rye also was allelopathic to a lot of weeds. And I can tell you the wild mustard that came up in the spring was not nearly as big a problem in the rye plots as it was in the conventional cotton plots. So, rye is not a bad option for an extended fallow period. I can remember people planting cotton, basically do the same thing that we do with wheat, like plant wheat in the fall, terminate it in the spring, plant cotton into it in May. I can remember people doing that same thing with rye and suggesting that rye was being allelopathic to the cotton, the decaying rye was being allelopathic to the cotton that they were planting into it. And I think there's something to that. But again, if we're going to have a fallow period that lasts for a full 12 months, then those allelopathic compounds will be gone by the time we actually plant cotton into it. So again, long answer to a short question. We wanted a really good stand, a really good crop of rye to keep that ground covered. And another thing I'll say to you is it took a long time for that rye to come up. It was marginal moisture, and we finally got a shower here, shower there. We finally got a decent stand. I think Barry kind of had the same experience with it this fall as well.